Hello, my name is Lisa Ross, though you may know me better as Paper Daisy Creations, and today I'm going to be showing you how to use mattress stitch to finish off this beautiful cowl. Now this cowl is freshly blocked, straight off the blocking boards. It doesn't even have a name yet. And I want to give you a little bit of advice. So you definitely want to block your cowl before you work the mattress stitch. In fact, this was the easiest cowl or the easiest block I've ever done using blocking wires because the wires slide right inside these I-cords, making it super easy to get the exact dimensions that you want. And I find that to be really helpful to get nice straight edges, and it's going to make doing the mattress stitch even easier. One really important thing when you block your knit is to make sure that this edge right here, this was our cast on edge, we want that to be the same as the flat edge, the same length as the flat edge that we ended with. So this is not our bound off edge. This is we had been working our increase lines along here. We stopped increasing at this point, and then we have a nice flat edge. And this should measure 5.5 inches. Or if your gauge is different, that's totally fine for this design. You just want to make sure that this length is exactly the same as this length of your cast on edge. And it's really easy to achieve that with wet blocking. So be sure you soak your knit thoroughly, squeeze out all the extra water, squeeze it out between two towels. And if you're using blocking wires, I find that incredibly helpful for getting nice straight lines. And then it really opens up the lace as well. So we are going to be working with our cast on edge and that flat edge to do mattress stitch, to seam these two together. And when you do mattress stitch, I have to admit, the first time that I saw it done, I felt like it was magic. It kind of zips the knits together and it looks perfect. That's the best way that I can explain it. So we're going to be taking these two edges, and even though we're going to be using the needle along the right side of our fabric, those two edges are going to come together perfectly. And you can see right here that these are exactly 5.5 inches long. They match up perfectly. The only tricky thing about doing mattress stitch with this knit is that because this edge was worked this way and this edge had been worked this way, we have different gauges because this has a different number of rows than we have stitches, because stitch and row gauge don't line up exactly. It's close with garter stitch, but not exact. And so I've got some tips that are going to help you get your mattress stitch just right. Now you should have ended your bind off with a length of yarn for seaming. I cut the yarn and then realized I did not leave a length. So I went ahead and wove in that tail, and I'm going to be using a fresh yarn. So if you're like me, no worries. Just use that same C5 color that you used for the cowl, and we will seam together. So I'm going to thread that onto a tapestry needle so that it's ready to go. All right, now the first thing before I start seaming, I want to be sure that these sides are going to match up exactly. And the way I'm going to stay on track is by using some stitch markers to help keep me on pace so that the two sides will line up neatly. So what I'm going to do, first of all, this I-cord bind off right here and this I-cord bind off, we're going to stick those two together. So I'm going to not include these in this part that I'm going to do next. So what I want to do is take my edge, which began with the first part of C5 and the last part of C5, but I'm not including the I-cord, and I'm going to fold it in half without including that I-cord. So that I-cord is sticking out, but aside from that, I have it folded in half. And I'm going to put in a stitch marker here to let me know that that is the halfway point. And the reason I do that is so that as I'm working mattress stitch, this halfway point will match up with this halfway point. So again, this first I-cord edge is not going to match up, or I'm sorry, this first I-cord edge is going to match up with this I-cord. And so I'm not going to include that in the halfway point, but this one doesn't match up with any I-cord. So I am going to include that. So I have, this was my, I'm going to show you it just so you can see. So I find it best to just line it up the way you're going to do it. These I-cords will match up. This one does not match up with a particular like I-cord that's sticking out. And so I'm going to take this and fold it in half, including the far I-cord as part of the half, but not the initial one. Okay, and I'm going to put a stitch marker right there to mark the half. Okay, and as you can see, that is going to line my two halves up. It's going to work out just great if I come to those points. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to get one more point that I want to match up. So I'm going to do it halfway between the halfway points. And again, I'm not including that initial I-cord. Here we go. And I'm going to do that here. Fold these together, not including the initial I-cord, marking that halfway point. Which is going to mark approximately 1/4 of the way. Okay, now obviously these things move around and I want to look at where they're attached and not necessarily how they're laying, so that they're going to line up neatly. And then I can do the halfway point up here as well. For this side, I am including that I-cord. You can do it how you would like, but this is how I'm going to do it. And match up this side. All right, and then those are just going to keep me on track. It's going to ensure that each of those parts will line up together as I'm working the mattress stitch. And now it's getting to be a bit of a mess, so you may not see it very easily. But that's what we're doing. All right, now my yarn will have started on this side if you had your yarn attached. Mine does not have the yarn attached, but that's okay. I'm just going to go into this I-cord to make it attached. And I need to leave a length, probably about 12 to 18 inches, about 30 centimeters. And into this part of the I-cord. So this time I'm going in on the opposite side. All right. Now, if your yarn was not attached to the I-cord, I would just go through, or I'm sorry, if your yarn was already attached, so you haven't gone through this I-cord yet, I would just go through it one more time, or one time right here. I have a little loose stitch, or a little bit of loose yarn. I'm going to just try to trap that in there. And so for this way with starting, I'm going to just go ahead and stick it through there. All right, now I need to make sure that I'm picking up, I don't want to be picking up any of the cast on stitches. Instead, I left this purl row. So on the wrong side, we purled, but it's actually done so that you can see these nice little stockinette V's. And it may be hard to see on this fingering weight yarn, but basically we're going to be picking up some amount of these little stockinette V's. And you can see them better on some stitches than others. Here's a good one. And we may be picking up one whole V, we may be picking up half a V, we may be picking up 1.5 V's. It all depends on how it lines up on this side. So on my bind off side, my C5, I have this beautiful I-cord that runs all the way down the edge. And for that gives me a nice straight edge to sort of see where the stitches are right next to it. And so right next to that I-cord, I can see these stitches, these bars of stitches. So it's sort of the bars between the stitches, between the I-cord and the garter stitch fabric. And you want to be picking up, basically you want your needle to be going right next to this I-cord. So if you can see that I-cord, so whatever stitches you bring up that are right next to that I-cord, that's what you want to do. Okay, so I am on the left side. Now I'm going to go over to the right side. And I'm going to start by picking up let's see, I'm going to go right next to my cast on edge, so I don't want to pick up anything in that cast on edge. I'm just picking up the stockinette V's that are right next to it. And I'm going to actually pick up 1.5 V's. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I want to get this side lined up with this side, and I can see that these stitches are a little bit longer than what I have with my cast on edge. So I'm going to pull that through, and you don't need to pull it super tight. It's actually really easy to pull at the end to just tighten everything up. So you can actually work the whole cast on edge without tightening it, and tighten it at the very end. It works really neat. It's kind of like a zipper. Okay, so now I'm going to go through these 2 bars, and you can see there's actually 2 stitches on each one since this was worked in garter stitch. So I'm going to go through that edge. Then over here, again, I think I'm going to do 1.5 bars. That seems to be about right. Okay. I can use these 2 pieces here to judge, make sure I'm staying on track. I'm going right next to the I-cord, so I don't want to pick up any pieces of the I-cord. This time I'm just going to pick up this 1 bar right here. And over here I'm going to go and pick up I'll go into 1.5. So it just depends. You need to sort of just gauge, just by looking at it, how close it is to getting those 2 pieces lined up. And if you've ever done a seamed set-in sleeve, this is the method that I use for getting it lined up neatly. All right, this side I'm going to pick up 1. I'm getting really close to that join, to that quarter-way point. I'm going to go, let's see, I think I can go all the way up to that quarter-way point. And so that means on this next one, I want to go up to that quarter-way point, which I'm going to take it off so I can see it better. Right here. Okay. Let me take this off. Okay, and then I'm actually just going to show you how it seams up, how I can just snug this up. I can pull from both ends. I'm going to get a nice, clean edge right here. Okay, so on the inside, you can see the cast on edge right there lined up right next to the I-cord. So I'm going to continue doing this. I'm going to continue working my way up, matching up each of those little pieces, and I will show you how we finish it off. Okay, so you can see right here, I'm at the very end. I'm right at my final I-cord, and it's going to just hook on to this last little bit of the C5 where I had started the C5 lace. So I'm going to go into that I-cord, and I'm just going to go like basically straight through the middle of it because that part's going to fold under, and I'm going to go right through here. Connect that last little bar of the C5. All right, and that's going to connect your I-cord right there. Now, because this part of the seam is right at the neck, there's going to be a little bit more strain on it. And so what I'm going to do is actually go through a couple times to really strengthen it. I mean, this is fingering weight yarn. It's not particularly strong. So I just want to make sure that that goes through, holds in tightly. I'm actually putting it through a couple different places just to make sure that there's not too much strain on any one part. It's just to get a nice, strong, firm edge right there. And I can even pull it onto the inside of the knit and just kind of whip stitch around that edging. And I'm going to go ahead and do that. So just to be sure that that holds strong. And it's a great way to finish off the knit. So on this last one, I'm going to go ahead and knot that. And I will continue to weave in the end, just cycling it through the stitches of the C5. And you can see that beautifully seamed mattress stitch. We've got a nice straight edge. Of course, it can be straightened better if you block it. So if you wanted to maybe just steam block or wet block this single part of it, it'll get laying even flatter, though since this is at the back of the neck, I'm really not too concerned about it. And I'll show you what the inside looks like. And I just love how neat these beautiful straight edges are. That cast on edge and that I-cord give you nice straight edges to make sure you're lining up your stitches correctly, nice and evenly, and then you get this beautiful finished cowl that you can enjoy for many years to come. I hope you'll look up my patterns on Ravelry or paperdaisycreations.com, and I wish you all very happy knitting.